for the kids going through it all. Good. Is the problem solved? We're still going. Yes, we know.
Good morning. The June 21st Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
All those in favor? The minutes are approved. Item 2.04 is established agenda order. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, I understand that yesterday the Secretaries and Assistants Association ratified a tentative agreement for fiscal year 2018. Dr. Arlotto, if the board ratifies that tentative agreement today, how does that work in conjunction with the funding the county council set aside for SAAC in the CAO contingency fund? In other words, how would we go about getting that money to our SAAC members?
Yes, ma'am. It's a so we'll have to now go through a process as you will go through the adoption of the budget today. The monies that were originally set aside for SAAC by and earmarked by this board in your budget request were taken out during the county council's deliberations, and that money was set up in a contingency fund. So that's now in another account that we don't have access to yet. As we go through the ratification process, if you do choose to move, the board chooses to move through that process and ratify the contract, we then have to request those monies from the CAO contingency fund back to our budget, and we'll go through the process. The process is that I'll have to write a letter to the county executive requesting those funds in what we call a first quarter transfer. It's not unnew to you. You've gone through that process in moving funds in the past during parts of the year. I'll make that request. The county executive then has to write a piece of legislation that gets introduced on his behalf to the county council. The county council will then have to go through their public process and several public hearings to adopt that piece of legislation to move the money from the CAO's contingency fund back into your account. Once it's in our account, then we can go through the process, the HR and payroll process, to pay our employees.
So, and I understand we also have a tentative agreement with SAAC on healthcare prescription drug plans for fiscal year 2017. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Given that, I have two motions. First, I move that we change item 5.06 to reflect the board's consideration to ratify the FY 2018 tentative agreement with SAAC rather than enact the terms of employment, and that we add to the agenda item 5.08 titled FY 2017 Prescription Copay Modification for SAAC. Further, I move we take up item 5.08 out of order and place it before item 5.06.
All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0.
And my second motion is to add item 5.09, titled First Quarter Budget Fund Supplemental and Transfer Request for FY 2018, to the agenda as an action item to address the SAAC funding from the county, conditional on the board's ratification of the SAAC negotiated agreement later in this meeting.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Motion passes 800.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right, item 2.05 is recognitions. And today we get to honor our own Carolyn Williams on her last board meeting day of the year. Carolyn is a pillar of strength and determination, and we have Kleenex for her. She has set her future goals high, and I know that there is absolutely nothing that's going to stop her from achieving them. She's also a most excellent public speaker, skills that are going to serve you very well, especially compared to many of your peers. Those are skills that I don't see in a lot of young people, and you're just amazing. And the board wanted to recognize you today with a clock that you can keep in your dorm room so you can make sure you get to class on time. Mrs. Nally?
Carolyn, I didn't bring my Kleenex. It's really been a pleasure to serve with you this year. I've served with 10 student board members, and you have been one of the most remarkable. As Stacy stated, you're eloquent. You are able to address in an insightful, caring manner many different topics that have come up. You always keep the interest of students at heart, and you have really been a pleasure, and I can't wait to watch your successes at Howard. I know we're going to be hearing about you, and I hope you come back and share some of those with us. We've enjoyed it when our student board members have come back. Thank you so much, because whether people realize it or not, the student board member's job is really hard. They have to maintain their grades, do all of that, plus keep up with the board business. And I will tell you, Carolyn has really done a good job. Thank you again. Thank you.
Mrs. Birch?
Thank you. I have really enjoyed sitting next to Carolyn this year. I have known 9 student board members, so not quite as many as Mrs. Nally, but almost. And it has been delightful. You are a joy to work with. As Mrs. Nally said, our student board members have always been phenomenal. Carolyn is absolutely no exception. In fact, she has been, probably more prepared than most of us, and she does an excellent job. We had the opportunity to see her speak to a group of our AACPS leaders yesterday, and I think that she knocked the socks off of all of them, and we know that she can be a leader anywhere that she goes. She has brought a remarkable perspective as a student leader this year. As she's told us, her life hasn't always been so easy, and that's been a great perspective to have as a student board member that we don't always get, and I have really appreciated having that and getting her perspective here. But it hasn't stopped her, and she's been able to tell us what the school system really means to her and how it could be better, and she's not afraid to tell us, and that's so important. And I know she's going to do awesome wherever she goes and whatever she does, and we're really going to miss you, and thank you for laughing at my jokes.
Mrs. Hummer?
Just echoing what it is, Carolyn, you've brought a unique and valuable perspective to everything that we have, and you've always spoken up for our most needy children and our most needy students, and we are so grateful that you have made a huge contribution to this school system and to this board, and I wish you nothing but the best. I'm looking forward to seeing you speak on television in years to come as you move forward and throughout your career and to continue to make a difference in the world.
Ms. Sasso?
Carolyn, I can only say continue to march, or continue forward with your goals with pride and devotion to your duty and what you consider to be first, and you will succeed in life. Thank you very much for your service, Carolyn.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you, Madam President. Carolyn, I want to just echo some of what's been said, and above all, thank you for your service, but really in particular, two key areas. One is for raising the bar. Again, I said this to Mr. Horskamp last year, and it certainly applies here. You have raised the bar, and you've left big shoes for your successor, and my hope is that you've really set a path for her to follow so that she can do the same. And that's really what it's about. The second is that you've given voice for people who've needed it. And again, I just can't stress how important that's been. And I can assure you that that voice will continue to be served here. And I really do thank you and appreciate all that you've done there. The year has flown by. It seems like yesterday that we just started on this path together, and I can't underscore enough how much you will reap the benefits of the service and what you've learned this year. It's going to help you not just in college. I can't attest to the bowling part at Howard, but it will help you in college, and then I can assure you it will help you in your professional career. When you show up on day one of your first post-college job and you're the youngest person in the room, you really won't be, because you're bringing an experience that very few have had. And I can assure you that that will speak volumes in years to come. So lastly, I will say you've made this board a better place to be. So thank you for that.
Mr. Grannon?
I want to thank you personally because in addition to your service to the entire community out here, you helped make me, in my first year, I hope, a little bit better of a board member, because I think your informal advice to me when I've just asked you, well, what do students think about this? What do you all think about this? What does a high school senior think about this? That's a perspective that, I don't have a direct connection to because my kids are really young, so I really appreciate that. And as a Howard alum, I'm very proud that you will be going there and continuing a tradition of excellence, and I look forward to hearing even greater things about you in the future.
Dr. Alato?
Thank you. Carolyn, you and I had a chance to talk yesterday. You did a fabulous job speaking in front of 800 of our leaders across the county. And I will echo everything that has already been said. You are wonderful. You have made this a stronger board. But more importantly for me, and these are things that we talked about throughout the year, is you have strengthened student voice across the school system. Two of your colleagues are here sitting at the back of the room. They followed your leadership. They followed your calling. And student voice became much stronger this year. So know that as you leave us and move forward, we are a better school system for that. Not only for your time on the board, but you brought real voice to our students. And know that that's greatly appreciated. So with that, we have two parting gifts for you. In addition to your clock, you can hang this in your dorm room. So this is your parking sign that we didn't get to mount this year, but we saved this for you throughout the year. And we also have a collage that our folks in Design and Print put together just to remind you of some of the things that you've been through this year with the board. We love you. You're wonderful.
Over here for the flags.
Okay, guys, real quick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little sick, number one, and number two, you all know I'm a crybaby by this point. I just want to say thank you to each of you. I've said it to my friends, I've said it to my family, I've said it to people that I've met at conferences. I enjoy coming to work. I enjoy working with each of you up here, and I've gained so many different perspectives by working with you and connecting with each of you on an individual level that I can't thank you enough for that. And to the staff, thank you all so much. I know that you don't necessarily have a chance to say something to me now, but just from seeing you when I come in the building and all the things that each of you have done for me individually, I can't thank you enough. And I know that the lessons that I have learned and the relationships that I have gained, I'm going to treasure and keep with me forever. Diane and Molly, you all mean the world to me. And it didn't matter if it was 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. You answered the phone, you responded to text messages, you responded to emails, and you made me feel so important and so valued throughout this entire year here. And thank you so much. I can't say thanks enough, because my story and my journey has been so rough. To come to a place where it didn't matter what it was that I went through, what it is that I'm still going through, and I was able to perform the job well without being, like, judged. You don't understand how happy that makes me. So thank you all so much.
Caroline, there's a couple people in the audience who would like to come up and say a few words. Emily and Jacob.
Let me just, I know you're kind of done crying, but sorry. For everyone that doesn't know me, my name is Emily Mosier. I just graduated from North County High School. Carolyn, from walking the mile and the pacer test with me in 8th grade, making up rap songs as we went, to sitting on the Board of Ed for Anne Arundel County, you've come so far, and I can't tell you how proud I am of all your accomplishments. You are a strong, beautiful, independent woman, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for you, and I'm proud to call you my friend. We've been through a lot, and we have more to get through, so here's to the future. I love you.
Carolyn, from what I've learned from you from the past few years and all in my time in Crask and my time with you, is never to jump to an emotional statement, because you always have sat back, took it in, and made an educated statement on whatever you said. And you're just such a great leader who considers everybody and every possible cause and effect on everybody that you represent and everybody that you lead. So I'm proud to call you a colleague, a coworker, and most of all a friend. So thank you for all that you've taught me, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Item 2.06 is school and community highlights. And nobody's pressing their button. I'll just kind of reiterate what happened yesterday. Carolyn and Teresa and I had the chance to go to the Unlocking Our Potential conference and hear the terrific keynote speaker after a wonderful speech by Carolyn. And it was just a wonderful day for everybody who's in leadership for AACPS, a chance to step back and listen and learn and develop their leadership skills to help us move forward in the 17-18 school year. So thank you to everybody who arranged the conference. It was a really wonderful day. I think you can see in the lobby today some of the highlights sketched by some of the students at Lindale Middle, yeah, or Severn River Middle, yeah. Item 2.07 is the CRASC report. We don't have one. No report today, okay. The next part of the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 3 cards: Allison Cohen, Julia House, and Lisa Van Buskirk.
I'll go first. Good morning, Board of Education and Dr. Arlotto. Lisa Van Buskirk, Start School Leader, Anne Arundel County. As we enjoy the day with the most amount of sunshine, I like to change the focus from what I normally talk about the early mornings. I like to talk about the evening activities that would end after today's sunset of 8:35 p.m. Soccer games, for instance, may not start until 7 and end about 9:30. And if the game is far away, then students aren't getting home till 10:30, 11. For those in school drama production, the practices may take almost the entire school year. Practice may not end until 8:30, 8:45. The nights of the full rehearsals and full production don't end until 10. After school clubs like South River's award-winning robotics club meet in the evenings, not just after the school ends, because community volunteers aren't available until 6 or 7. Meetings may end as late as 8:30 to 9. So students of all ages are participating in these school-sponsored activities with end times of 8:30, 8:45, 9, 9:45, and even as late as 10, maybe even 11 when factoring sports travel. I'd like to contrast that with Maryland's child labor laws. Minors 14 and 15 years of age may not be employed or permitted to work before 7 a.m. or after 8 p.m. Arguably, riding a school bus is school-related and occurs before the state of Maryland would otherwise permit a student to work. Minors of 16 and 17 years of age must be allowed at least 8 hours of consecutive non-work, non-school time in each 24-hour period. That's 8 hours presumably for sleep, and 8 hours being the bare minimum of sleep needed at that age. There are instances when school activities get out late enough that students cannot get those 8 hours of sleep, even if they went right to sleep if they got home. If you had attended the April Teen Sleep Conference, you would have heard Dr. Charles Seisler from Harvard recommend a minimum of 11 hours between the end of school activities and the start of school. 20 years ago as a cadet at the Coast Guard Academy, which I know dates myself, when I participated in sports and we got back after taps at 10, we were allowed late rack, which allowed us to skip the 6 a.m. reveille, the 6:20 formation, and breakfast to allow a few more minutes of sleep. AACPS students are out just as late with school activities, but aren't allowed late rack the next day. The Department of Labor and Licensing has set age-appropriate hours for Maryland students to protect their health and safety. Maryland's after-school activities routinely violate these hours. Switching topics, at the Davidsonville Civic Association meeting earlier this month, County Executive Hsu responded to a question from a colleague. My administration supports later start times. I know the science. I raise teenagers. But the County Council and I aren't the boss. It's up to the Board of Education, and they've decided that money for better school times are not among its spending priorities. When will better school times be a spending priority, one upon which the County Executive and County Council can evaluate against other budget priorities? And when you finally make it a priority after 20 years of effort by the community, please ensure that the sports and everything else in the afternoon and evening aren't just pushed back, so that students are actually permitted the 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And finally, Ms. Williams, I wish you luck at Howard, and I hope that you enjoy starting school after 7:17 in the morning. Thank you.
My name is Julia Howes. I'm a proud parent of an upcoming second grade student at Shadyside Elementary, PTO Vice President and member of the community. I am here regarding our concerns relating to the overcrowding second grade classrooms at Shadyside Elementary School for the 2017-2018 school year and the negative impact this will not only have on my daughter, but the other students in the school and the South County community. We understand that due to current funding, Shadyside will not be able to secure a much-needed additional teacher for Shadyside. As parents and volunteers in the school, we were so alarmed to learn that the current 4 first grade classes at Shadyside Elementary School with 20 to 22 students per class will next year be combined into 3 second grade classes of approximately 28 students per class. The class size of 28 7 to 8-year-old students is not conducive for productive learning. A class size of 28 is unacceptable at most elementary school grade levels, but particularly for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade, where engagement and nurturing are imperative. We have great teachers and staff at Shadyside, but even the best teachers cannot provide 28 students the individual time they need for the large classes. Moreover, the class sizes will make it difficult to adequately supervise, assess, and engage students and keep them safe. At 500 students at Shadyside Elementary, it is at 111% capacity. Deal Elementary is at 73% capacity, Lothian at 81% capacity, and Tracy's is at 91% capacity. I understand that is a much larger situation and will take some time to go over, but why does Shadyside Elementary have oversized classrooms when other clusters schools are so under capacity? Why are Deal Elementary classes 17 to 19 when Shadyside is 27 to 29? A review of the latest Maryland class size report indicates that the average elementary school class in Anne Arundel County should be 21.5 students per class. We only ask for what most of Anne Arundel County is already getting and what is expected. A second grade class consistent with the county's average that can only be obtained by adding another elementary school teacher position at Shadyside. I thank you for the time to listen and your consideration for additional teachers at Shadyside.
Hello, my name is Allison Cohen, and first of all, I want to thank you for your commitment to educating students in Anne Arundel County. As a classroom teacher, we do not always see the progress at the administrative level, but we know that without such daily operations, classroom teaching would not be possible. I've always dreamed of becoming an inspirational teacher like my mother, as far as I can remember, watching the classic light bulb moments from students' minds, working alongside like-minded people, participating in cooperation with families as we work to educate their children, and receiving amazing non-materialistic gifts from the heart from students are just a few of the many charms of teaching we all love. I'm a passionate, reputable, intelligent, ambitious, rigorous, and enthusiastic educator and would do anything I can to cultivate growth and advocate for my students. As the AACPS interview team stated right here in May of 2016, as I relocated to Maryland, I am an ideal candidate. However, I'm also a teacher leaving this county and perhaps the profession. Here are some reasons why. I care deeply about the values of public education. The climate at the school in which I worked created an environment where the quality of teaching practices, relationships, professional development, and relationships with students and families were practically impossible. It came to my attention in middle school years that educators should not act as hypocrites. If students are prohibited from gum and low-cut shirts and nose rings, so should educators. The same goes for other behaviors. We are the epitome of positive role models. If we act as such, our students will become imitations of respectful interactions, meticulous work, and problem-solving skills. When the administration represents just the opposite, both staff and students are at a loss. As I value positive relations and quality teaching practices, anything less than satisfactory is not acceptable for any staff or student working hard each day to eliminate all gaps and elevate students. Students deserve encouragement, love, and evidence-based educational practices. I believe teachers and other members of the staff do as well. Please contact me for further information should you be interested in ensuring that teachers and students in every elementary school and other schools succeed to their fullest potentials. I will continue to advocate not only for the wonderful students whom I taught this year, but also for the inspiring, hardworking, and underpaid teachers who tirelessly work to teach them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before the board at this time? All right, we'll move on to consent items. Do I have a motion to bundle 4.01 through 4.15 and move them from information to action?
So moved.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the board approve contracts as listed on today's agenda, 4.01 through 4.15.
So moved.
Mr. Grannon?
Question, one of the items, I think it's 4.12, 4.12, thank you. Could you address the financials involved in our leasing of space for these cell phone towers?
Yes, sir. For the record, Alex Shaknovis, Chief Operating Officer. To begin with, this is a revenue item, so it's not an expense item for the Board of Education. So the potential is to garner revenue coming in as opposed to expenditures going out. So that's first and foremost. The second is that the master leasing agreement has a financial structure that is as such. Upon the installation of the telecommunications tower, there is an initial $25,000 siting fee for essentially the pole. And then there is each pole is capable of carrying between 1 through 5 carriers, a carrier being a telecommunications service provider such as a Verizon, an AT&T, a Sprint, etc. So for each carrier that is mounted on the pole, each additional carrier that's mounted on a pole, there is a one-time $5,000 per carrier additional fee. And then there is a revenue split that occurs once the pole is operational for essentially the life of that structure. And again, depending on how many carriers, that the board accrues a 40% of the revenue generated from that pole for the life of that structure accrued to the Board of Education as well.
Okay, so to break that down, the initial payment for the placement of the pole is $25,000.
Yes, sir.
Then up to $5,000 per carrier.
Yes.
So up to 5 carriers, that could be 25 plus 20. That's $50,000 plus 40% of the revenue stream that comes through that tower for perpetuity.
Yes, just one minor clarification. The $25,000 includes the first carrier on it. So it's
really
4 additional, so it's 20 on top of the initial 25, and then 40% of the revenue split, essentially in perpetuity for the life of that operational pole.
So $45,000 plus the 40% going forward for
Yes.
however many number of years. Just kind of simple math. That in fact would be better for us financially than, let's say, getting $100,000 up front and never getting anything else.
Correct. There's multiple models to finance these, but we believe the structure that we have by far is the most preferential and has the ability to garner the maximum amount of revenue for this Board of Education.
And just so I'm being transparent with everyone, I'm asking these questions because I and I believe several other board members have received email inquiries from people in the public asking about the financials, and I think that those are very valid concerns for those citizens to be raising. And you've answered these questions to my satisfaction, and I hope that addresses the concerns of those citizens as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you. For 4.01 specifically, the auditorium flooring at North County High School, does that include the stage?
No, it does not. So this is the seating, the flooring, and the lighting that goes down the runways. So it's for the audience element of the facility, not for the stage element.
And the reason for my question is not specifically germane then to this, given that the stage is not included, but Mrs. Nally and I were at Severna Park High School for the evening high school graduation. And you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can, certainly, but and we were sitting on the stage, for a brand new high school. That stage was practically destroyed. and the stage flooring specifically. And I just want to raise that as a concern, that as those additional contracts come up, we potentially evaluate them. If there's better flooring, again, given drama club activities and rock and roll revival, whatever it may be at specific schools, that the stage be maintained a little bit better, potentially with some of the contracts we enter into.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. The next two items are action items on the budget. Item 5.01 is fiscal year 2018's operating budget final adoption. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move it from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Board of Education FY 2018 operating budget to include internal budget adjustments as approved by the board.
I believe we have a presentation.
Yes, let us allow us an opportunity to introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Stansky, Director of Financial Operations.
Lisa Seaman Crawford, Director of Facilities.
So this brief presentation is centered around item 5.01 that is before you as both an information and action item regarding the FY 2018 operating budget. And if you would allow us to briefly bring you up to date, when we last appeared before you, we presented the county executive's proposed operating budget that was delivered on the 1st of May. So we want to walk you through the changes that have transpired since then. And specifically, as of the 14th of June, the County Council adopted an ordinance, and embedded within that ordinance was the appropriation authority for the school district. And there were a number of substantive changes, few but substantive, regarding the differential between the May 1 and the June 14th adopted budget. So if you take a look at the exhibit before you on the revenue side, there were two substantive changes. One is on the county line item, the third line item down, highlighted in yellow. There was a decrease on the revenue side of $1.885 million, and that revenue reduction was attributable to the amendment number 80 that was enacted on the part of the council unanimously to delete the compensation and associated fixed charges revenue that was affiliated with the bargaining agreement for the SAAC group, Unit 4, because we did not have an agreement at that time clearly, and therefore there was not clarity around what the fiscal note on that would be. Similarly, if you go down just a little bit further on the revenue side to the very bottom highlighted number, when the county executive proposed his budget on May the 1st, there was, as permissible under the outside of MOE one-time exclusionary or non-reoccurring revenue provisions that was approved by the state superintendent and the state board, the county was authorized to allocate up to $7.5 million for the Board of Education outside of MOE as a contribution towards the fixed charges category, and specifically as essentially a working fund that we could use collaboratively in negotiations with our unions to help the transition to a higher cost healthcare model, inclusive of higher premium splits, higher copays, higher out-of-pocket maximums, etc. So the county executive's budget on May 1 did in fact fully utilize the maximum permissible amount, $7.5 million, that again had been previously authorized up to that amount by the state superintendent state board. The council again introduced a amendment to the budget that lowered that amount by $1.2 million. So the amount lowered from $7.5 million down to the $6.3 million that's before you today. Again, that is essentially the mathematical or pro rata portion of the 7.5 that's attributable to the SAAC bargaining unit, again, which we did not have an agreement at the time of striking the budget. Everything else on the revenue side does, again, match with the previous presentation that was delivered just after May the 1st. So going down on the expense side, there's the commensurate offsets. So the first two line items are different than you last saw May 1. The compensation placeholder and the fixed charges placeholder were lowered collectively by $1.885 million, as I indicated earlier in the compensation area. And then if you go to the very last line on that exhibit at the very bottom of the page, you'll see that it now depicts $6.3 million instead of $7.5 million, and that is the $1.2 million offset. So if you were to lay the county executive's budget side by side together with the county council's adopted, they are exactly the same in each and every manner, with the exception of the $1.885 million SAAC compensation element and the $1.2 million one-time exclusionary offset element. Other than that, they exactly align both in personnel counts, FTE authority, as well as revenue and expenditure authority. All in, year over year, the budget that was adopted includes a total of $29.061 million. It is a 2.59% year over year, 18 over 17% increase at the bottom line. That is less than the board's original request. Remember, the request that was transmitted to the county had a request for $50.8 million. That being said, it does allow us to fully fund the negotiated, contemplated negotiated agreements, as well as it does provide some better level of stability for the healthcare fund on a going forward basis. And I believe with that, we'll conclude our remarks and open it up to any questions you might have, Madam President.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you again, Madam President. I've got one question that I wanted to ask, but first, just to say thank you to each of you for shepherding this process. I know there were a lot of nights, including a midnight visit to the county council, so a couple of weeks ago. So thank you for all of that. My question is specific to the healthcare fund balance. I know we are ending the year with roughly $7.2 million in that balance, so that means we'll begin the next fiscal year with that amount. Again, $7.2 million or so, give or take. It's my understanding that there's still work to be done there, and I just wanted to get your expert opinion, just forecasting mechanisms that you've used or are using. What is your assessment of the health of the healthcare fund balance?
Yes, sir. So thank you. I guess first and foremost, it was critically important that we closed out the FY17 year with a positive balance. That occurred largely as a result of a vote that was just taken this past Monday night. Two actions were enabled. One, the county government transferred on a permanent basis, so this is inside of MOE. They transferred an additional $5 million of revenue to the Board of Education, specifically for the fixed charges category. And then earlier, just 2 meetings ago, this board adopted a supplemental budget transfer and adjustment request that was transmitted to the county. That also was approved by the county council just this past Monday night. So those two actions collectively allowed us to close the current fiscal year on a positive note. That's good news, step A. As you know, though, I've used the word structural deficit many a times for our healthcare fund. So while we're currently balanced in the current fiscal year and are likely to end in a balanced position, hopefully, in FY18, the structural balance essentially remains. We didn't get into this hole in one fell swoop. We're not going to get out of it in one fell swoop. Fundamentally, the issue is that the cost of healthcare is rapidly outpacing the cost of all the other segments, the business segments. As I alluded to earlier, at the very bottom of the exhibit that's still up on the screen, our budget expanded by 2.59% all in. but the cost of healthcare is escalating at a much more rapid pace. So, for example, the traditional medical elements of healthcare is expanding at least 5 to 6%, and that's a very wishful conservative number. Prescription medical costs are escalating at 9 to 10%, with no abatement in sight. So essentially, the cost of healthcare is accelerating at a much more rapid pace than our ability to keep up with it. And so while we've taken some actions to make inroads to begin to add some stability and slowly erode at the structural deficit, the work is clearly not done. The discussions that we've had with the county executive branch of government, the county legislative branch of the government, the superintendent and MSD as well, we've indicated this is going to be a multi-year strategy, that we're going to have to continue to chip away at it, both on constraining costs, on increasing the employees' share, and then us as a governmental unit both providing additional revenue into the fund and or reallocating or redirecting monies internally towards the healthcare fund. So while we've bought a little bit more time, Mr. Gillen, we're clearly not out of the woods. This is going to be a very difficult area for us, and probably it's the one that probably requires our greatest amount of fiscal focus and efforts currently.
Mrs. Birch.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say thank you as well for your yeoman's work on this. I know I'm grateful for the collegial manner in which this was all handled. You know, the budget was passed without the problems that have happened in the past. Everyone got along. Everyone was working for a common good and a common cause. The newspaper even talked about how great it was. There weren't the issues in the past years that we've had. You know, how it's fantastic. But I think as a county, as a board, we need to look at this budget and not just look at what is there, but we need to make sure we're looking at what isn't there. We did get a budget passed that keeps us able to pay for our employees' health insurance. And we did pass a budget that gives our employees a pay raise this year. And that's great. And I'm really pleased that we're able to do that. But what weren't we able to do? And is that a priority for us and for our county? And not just for the school system, but for our county as a whole. And we need to think about that as a community. As a community, what are our priorities? Is it a priority for us to have well-paid teachers? We're able to give them a step increase this year. But is that enough? We weren't able to do what we wanted to do. We weren't able to add 120 positions that was the bare minimum that this board thought was necessary to serve our students. This was not a pie-in-the-sky request. This was cut back from what our staff really thought they needed. We weren't able to do that. The community needs to decide what our priorities are. We're told there isn't enough money to do more. Well, why isn't there enough money? What are our priorities? I think Anne Arundel County, our community, needs to take a good hard look at itself and decide what our priorities are. Because if our priorities are just barely keeping up and just barely paying the bills, I think a lot of people need to know that. But if our priorities are providing for our kids and making sure they have what they need to succeed in life, then maybe we need to make some changes. Again, I'm glad that there was a peaceful budget passage. But I think we all need to look and see what we can do so that we can do more, so that we can do what's right, so that we can serve our kids the best that we can.
Ms. Sasso.
Following along what Teresa just said, I am a little bit upset since I had recommended this amendment. And I think that the teachers basically deserve a better pay, especially since the past years they did not receive it. And this has to do with the amendment to start 2008 on those 3-4 years where they did not get the increase. I think it is owed to them, and I think it is part of basically the citizens of the county and the city council, the county council, to basically look at how we can bring our teachers up to par, because those are the ones that basically provide the education to our students. Thank you.
Mr. Grannon?
If it's appropriate, I'm just going to take a moment to address the upcoming vote, because I don't think there's going to be an opportunity to really do that as we're voting. I'm going to vote against the proposed operating budget today, and I'd like to take a moment to explain why. Earlier this year, when we were presented with the superintendent's proposed budget of $1.164 billion, Mr. Gilliland and I offered a couple of proposed amendments to reduce certain line items to account for the fact that we anticipated that there wouldn't be sufficient funds to pay for them. So, for example, I proposed a reduction of only $339,590 out of a proposed budget of, again, $1,164,657,762. And if my math is right, that was less than 0.02% of a difference. And the gist of the response from board members who disagreed, and obviously that's their prerogative to do that, was that it's important to ask for as much as possible, otherwise you will never receive. And I disagreed with that proposition then, and I continue to disagree with it today. I don't think it is responsible for us as stewards of public funds to effectively rubber stamp the superintendent's budget request year after year when we know the reality is that the funds won't be there to meet that request. That model of operating effectively passes the buck for making tough choices about educational priorities for our students to the county executive and the county council. So, for example, the reductions that I proposed and that Mr. Gilliland and I voted for were in fact adopted by the county council and presumably will be endorsed by this board when a majority votes to approve this operating budget in a few moments. I feel our students and the school system would be better served if we as a board exercised more discretion in considering budget requests from superintendents going forward, in particular by taking into account fiscal realities. When we don't do that, we abdicate that decision-making to the county executive and the county council, who, with all due respect, are not the officials charged most closely as being the education policy specialists who oversee the school system and its budget. Now, I think the point I'm making will apply with particular force once the members of this board become elected officials in their own right, but I don't think we need to wait to become an elected board to exercise the judgment and responsibility to approve budgets according to funds that are likely to be available, rather than year after year sending out budgets that we know will never be approved. And I hope additional board members will consider that perspective in the budget process next year. Perhaps the county executive and the county council will take this board's, the future board's, budget approvals more seriously when those budgets become more based on realities than on wishes.
Mrs. Summer?
I disagree with my colleague that we rubber stamp the superintendent's budget. Many of us meet with the staff and the superintendent for a great deal of time before that comes out, so we know what's there, and we've shared our priorities as well. So we know beforehand what comes out, so there's nothing that's rubber stamped. It is informed vote. The state of Maryland purposely created Board of Educations to be separate from the county government so that our decisions are made not based on what the county or elected officials may say they may give us, but that we can truly meet a moral and legal obligation to advocate for the true needs of the school system, to put forward to the public and our elected officials what is truly needed to meet the needs of all of our students and provide an excellent education that benefits not only our students but also the entire county by creating an educated workforce that attracts businesses and grows the economy and creates the best environment to live, work, and start a business in Maryland. We are called to do that. It is our position that we have to put forth the need. Our elected officials and the public will not know what those needs are if we do not put them out there as a priority. We would be derelict in our duty if we did not put forth these things and ask for the funds needed. Looking at areas that aren't funded in this budget, I find it hard to believe that anyone could argue that we don't need 33 additional teachers to meet our 700 plus student growth, or 23 teachers to serve our growing special education population, or 10 teachers to serve our growing ELL population. This is an excellent budget that meets our top priorities for this year. The county council, county executive, and the school system worked tirelessly, collaboratively to craft the budget that we need to meet our most immediate needs. But let us not be fooled that this meets everything that we need as a system. It meets our most pressing needs right now. It meets the needs of our teachers, which is our top priority. But it's very clear that it does not meet all of our needs. And for us not to highlight those things in our budget request in this year and in years to come would again be dereliction of our duty and a disservice to our families and students.
Mr. Grannon?
I'll just follow up briefly and say that the point that I'm trying to make, and I hope it's not that controversial, is that if we want the, if you call them the political branches, to take the budgets approved by this board more seriously and perhaps apply a little more deference to the choices that are made by this board, I think our approved budgets and our suggestions will have more force when we ourselves exercise more discretion in scrutinizing those proposals. So, for example, when a proposed budget has a proposed 120 new full-time equivalent hires from the superintendent, and then we as a board will not consider reducing even 4 of those, when that's voted down, and then we send out the request for 120, and guess what comes back from the county council? 0. So I don't think we'd be derelict if we, on the front end, actually tried to make some of these tough choices rather than giving it over to 7 elected people who are not educational specialists to make those choices for us and then vote unanimously to approve what they do. So if you disagree with the idea that these are not enough teachers to and other educational professionals to carry out the priorities that we need for our school, then you should vote against this budget. But if you don't do that, then you are approving it. And to say, okay, well, all we've got to do at the front end is ask for as much as possible, that's our public responsibility, and if we don't do that, then we're derelict. And then at the end, when the sausage comes out, you say, oh yeah, this sausage is great, I'm going to vote for it. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Mrs. Birch?
Alex, voting against this budget, if the board voted against it, would just mean we don't have any money to spend. Is that correct?
So we're obligated to essentially have an adopted budget that does not exceed the appropriation authority that's granted by the council and within those 14 state categorical areas. Not adopting a budget would create a lot of complexities in that essentially while we would have the appropriation authority to dispense the monies, we would not have the operational authority here internally to dispense the monies. So absent an approved budget, while we would have monies in our account, we wouldn't have the authority to actually issue checks, be it to vendors or employees or utility companies, et cetera.
So there is no advantage to voting against the budget. I mean, if we want to be able to spend any money, we need to adopt a budget, basically.
I believe you're obligated to adopt some semblance of a budget simply so that beginning July 1, we've got the direction of this board on how you want those funds that have been appropriated to you distributed.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to echo the statements from Ms. Burge, Ms. Sasso, and Ms. Hummer, and I'm very grateful for the cooperative manner in which this budget was passed and worked on, especially with your team. I'm very grateful for that. And as Ms. Hummer said, this started with Dr. Arlotto requesting from his staff and from us what our priorities were so that he could craft a recommendation that was not everything we wanted, but certainly as modest as we could be back in the winter time. We all realize there's only so much money in the pot. And as Ms. Burge just said, our citizens do need to consider if we want to enlarge the pot as a county. So that request like ours for additional teachers, Dr. Arlotto's, ours, and Ms. Howell's today when she came to speak, in order to reduce class sizes across the board in our school system, we need to add teachers. This year we had a different priority, and that was to shore up the healthcare and to make sure we were able to give our staff and our teachers a step increase. So approving this budget for me today isn't saying that I agree that we have 0 teachers on the list, but that the priorities that we ended up expressing to the council and to the county executive and to Dr. Arlotto are at least going to be passed so that we can move forward and we can work on the next year's budget while we talk to citizens and while citizens advocate whether or not they want the pot to increase. That's the biggest question in the room today. Do we want to increase the pot as a county? If not, it's going to be like this every year. And we understand that. Are there any public comments on this item? All those in favor of the FY 2018 operating budget? Opposed? Motion passes 7-1. Item 5.02 is also an information to action item, the FY 2018 capital budget adoption. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt the County Council approved FY 2018 capital budget as presented.
And we have a presentation on this one too.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Alex Sheknova, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Stansky, Director of Financial Operations.
Lisa Seaman Crawford, Director of Facilities.
And so much aligned with the comments that were offered following the delivery of the county executive's budget in May 1. This is the largest funded appropriation authority capital budget that I am aware of, certainly in my tenure here. So overall, the board requested just in excess of $240 million. Slightly in excess of $197.3 million was finally approved, and that's a combination of state and local county sources. 3 substantive changes occurred during the deliberations of the council. Those were the following. Edgewater by amendment, by 3 separate amendments actually. Edgewater Elementary School had $667 additional $1,000 added to its appropriation authority for FY18. Similarly, Tyler Heights had $667,000 added to it, and Richard Henry Lee had $666,000 added to it. Those are the only 3 changes that transpired between the county executive's delivery on May the 1st and the county council's adoption on the 14th of June. Everything else remained exactly as it was previously presented. And with that, we'll open up to any questions you might have.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you again. Just one question that I wanted to ask, and it's the line item 26, aging schools. It's roughly, 15% cut from what was originally requested. Just to explain what the impact of that would be. What does not get funded next year, or what projects would not be funded based on the reduction in that line item?
Okay. Well, this is a little bit of an oddity. It's a reduction to which we have absolutely no objection to at all, Mr. Gilliland. Essentially, this is as a result of a current year action by the executive branch of state government. So in the current year, FY17, we had an aging schools program that had $506,000 in it from the state, the balance of which was funded by the county. So aging schools is a grant that funds capital improvements in buildings, but they do not fund the design, planning or design elements. Those have to be locally funded. So in the current year, that being FY17, Mr. Gillen, the county put in their share of the local funding, and the state, we were in alignment to receive $506,000 from the state. The governor's budget did not, in the current year, fund the aging schools program. So we never received the state share contribution for that in the current year, FY17, and therefore we did not expend the local county's contribution in FY17. Now rolling forward into FY18, Mr. Gillen, the budget that was approved by the General Assembly does in fact have funding in it for the Aging Schools program in FY18. We did not have to ask the county government for any additional monies, local monies, because we had FY17 monies appropriation that we never spent. So we're taking the FY17 money that was never spent, we're rolling it forward into FY18 to complement this. So at the end of the day, there is actually no reduction, no service reduction in the amount of projects that we're going to undertake. It's the projects from FY17 that were deferred that are being rolled forward into FY18. And I know it's a little bit convoluted, but that's essentially the totality of how this occurred.
What I wanted to hear was no impact.
No impact.
So thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
Thank you. This is not actually about the current year. This is about the out-year plan. And I can't remember what was on the county executive's 6-year plan versus what is on this one, and I apologize for that. I cannot remember, did the county executive also zero out all of the Old Mill projects except for the Old Mill West project?
That's correct. So all the out years, so not only 18, but no changes occurred in the May 1 county executive's proposal versus the June 14th adopted. So in years 19 through 23, they exactly aligned. So no amendments were offered
to add any of those back
out-year
in.
projects.
Okay, so at this point in the county's 6-year plan, 6-year capital budget, they have Old Mill North, Old Mill South, Old Mill High School, all zeroed out till at least 2024.
Well, yes, correct. But let me just opine briefly on that. Is that during the course of the current fiscal year, we concluded the viability study that the county government had funded, and so the budget that was prepared and presented last September was absent the information that was gleaned from that viability study. And I think the executive and legislative branch of the county understood and appreciated the fact that the conclusion, the results of the viability study would probably provide guidance on how the Old Mill project in total would look and the structure and the cost of that, and more than likely create a recasting of our request for Old Mill. So I think essentially it's a little bit more of a pause, Ms. Burge, to allow the viability study information, to allow that recalibration, and I think there will be a greater focus on that project in the budget ahead. And the second element of it is that, as you recall, the county put aside monies in the FY17 budget, albeit not ours, in the county's budget for land acquisition, for site acquisition. And how we were able to discharge the mannerism in which we could undertake the entire Old Mill project, to some extent is predicated on whether we're successful or not successful in acquiring land to support the project. So that was the second reason that there was a little bit of cart before the horse piece, and I think both the executive and legislative branch of county government wanted to see how the land acquisition elements concluded, hopefully successfully concluded, and therefore that again would allow them and us to re-examine how we want to tackle that project.
Okay, so two things. One, does that impact the Mountain Road then, because that has to come afterwards, or why did they zero out Mountain Road as well?
I think largely it's spending affordability in the out years until we can all nail down to a greater degree of specificity the cost of the Old Mill project. It is not sure whether, I mean, the county's got, just as the state has, some extremely well-defined capital debt affordability ratios that govern the amount of debt that they can issue. and they have to have a better handle, I think, on the expenditures before they can commit to greater indebtedness levels.
Okay, and I'm assuming that they didn't think about the optics of what that looks like to the community of zeroing out a project until 2024 before they made that decision, because if I were in the Old Mill community, I'd be a little distressed to see my schools being zeroed out until at least 2024, but that's just my personal opinion.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor of the FY 2018 capital budget? Motion passes 8-0-0. The next series of items are related to terms of employment. Item 5.03 is terms of employment for Unit 1 employees for fiscal year 2018, which is TAC. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of terms of employment for Unit 1 employees for fiscal year 2018.
So moved.
And I believe we have a little presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Mrs. Korbalak, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. The fiscal authorities for Anne Arundel County did not provide sufficient funds in the FY 2018 budget to fully fund the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County. Accordingly, pursuant to provisions of the Education Article and the TAC negotiated agreement, the parties must renegotiate applicable sections of the negotiated agreement. For this reason, I respectfully request that the following terms of employment be established for Unit 1 employees for fiscal year 2018, which will continue until any modified terms are approved and or ratified. First, that there would be no second full step provided to eligible employees who remain in Unit 1 during the 2009 school year and who remain employed in Unit 1 into the 2017-18 school year. Additionally, there will be no increase in the current annual reimbursement allotment which is a maximum of 6 credits. Thank you.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Item 5.04 is also an action item, terms of employment for Unit 2 employees for fiscal year 2018, which is AEL. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 2 employees for fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Presentation.
Yes. Again, the fiscal authorities for Anne Arundel County did not provide sufficient funds in the fiscal year 2018 budget to fully fund the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Association of Educational Leaders. Accordingly, pursuant to provisions of the Education Article and the AEL negotiated agreement, the parties must renegotiate applicable sections. For this reason, I respectfully request that the following terms of employment be established for Unit 2 employees for fiscal year 2018, which will continue until any modified terms are approved and or ratified. First, that no second full step will occur for eligible employees who were employed in Unit 2 during the 2008-9 school year and who remain employed in Unit 2 into the 2017-18 school year. In addition, there will be no performance pay awarded to employees at this time. Thank you.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Item 5.05 is terms of employment for Unit 3 employees for fiscal year 2018, which is AFSCME. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 3 employees for the fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Yes. Again, for the record, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. The fiscal authorities for Anne Arundel County did not provide sufficient funds in the FY 2018 budget to fully fund the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1693. Accordingly, pursuant to provisions of the Education Article and the AFSCME negotiated agreements, the parties must renegotiate applicable sections. For this reason, I again respectfully request that the following terms of employment be established for Unit 3 employees for the fiscal year 2018, which will continue until any such modified terms are approved and or ratified. There will be no second full step awarded to eligible employees who were employed in Unit 3 during the 2008-9 school year and who remain employed in Unit 3 into the 2017-18 school year.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. We'll now take item 5.08 out of order per Ms. Hummer's motion. This is the FY 2017 prescription copay modification for the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County. Dr. Olato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval. We're on 5.08.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I recommend approval of the tentative agreement regarding the FY 2017 prescription copay modifications between the Board of Education and the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County.
Okay.
Yes, again, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. The negotiating teams for the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County have reached a tentative agreement regarding prescription copay modifications for fiscal year 2017. In an effort to initially address ongoing and significant economic challenges facing Anne Arundel County Public Schools health care fund balance, the parties agreed to increases for employee prescription copay costs, which will become effective on January 1st, 2018. In brief, the following terms were agreed upon. 1, there would be no increase for generic prescription plans. Secondly, a $5 increase for preferred brand prescriptions would occur from $15 to $20. In addition, there would be a $10 increase for non-preferred brand prescriptions, which would occur for a $25 to a $35 increase. A fourth tier was created for high-cost specialty drugs, which will result in a $50 copay in calendar year 2018, a $65 copay in calendar year 2019, and a $75 copay in calendar year 2020. I wanted to take a time to thank Bradley Darjan, who is the UNISERV Director for SAAC, SAAC President Helen Wilkerson, who is sitting with me today, and the entire SAAC negotiating team for their dedicated efforts during the FY17 negotiations on this important issue. SAAC ratified this agreement on June 20th, 2017, and I respectfully request your approval and ratification of the noted summary of changes. Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Helen Wilkerson, and I am the president of SAAC. And I want to say that this was a tough bargaining session this year. I gained another 1,000 strands of gray hair. We appreciate the efforts between SAAC and the board, and I'd like to thank you, Melissa, for working tirelessly and diligently with SAAC. Although we couldn't negotiate what we felt was fair and affordable for our members, we know our members will continue to have good insurance and employees' relations. Dr. Olato, we appreciate your good faith effort in moving forward expeditiously in the process of asking the County Council to release the contingency funds so that the Unit 4 members can receive the compensation they deserve. As I cultivate the future leadership of SAAC, I look forward to building a more collaborative relationship with the board and the central office. We thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? All those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ladies, are you in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 5.06 is the ratification of the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the tentative agreement with Unit 4 employees for fiscal year 2018.
Presentation.
Yes, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. The negotiating team for the Board of Education and the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County have reached a tentative agreement for fiscal year 2018, subject to your approval. In brief, the summary of changes as agreed upon by both parties include a one-step increase for all eligible Unit 4 employees, a 1.11% COLA for all Unit 4 employees. There are modifications to the vacation annual leave article. And lastly, there are also modifications to health care plan design. This year, the teams negotiated exceptionally difficult issues, particularly related to health care. In spite of these challenges, both the negotiating teams ultimately reached an agreement which supports employees and addresses structural deficiencies in the health care fund. However, both parties worked diligently to reach an agreement that serves the best interest of the board, SAAC, members, and supports their commitment to AACPS students, staff, and community. On June 20th, 2017, SAAC ratified this agreement, and I respectfully request your approval and ratification of the summary of changes. Thank you.
I was a little out of order, but thank you for all your considerations. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Thank you. Item 5.07 is terms of employment for Unit 5 and Unit 6 employees for FY 2018. These are, many of these are our central office employees.
Correct.
Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 5 and Unit 6 employees for fiscal year 2018.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Yes. Terms of employment have been established for AACPS's non-represented Unit 5 and Unit 6 employees for fiscal year 2018. The following is a summary of recommended changes. 1, there will be a step increase for all eligible Unit 5 employees and a 1% increase for employees at the top of the scale who are not otherwise eligible for a step. There will be a 2% cost of living adjustment for all Unit 5F and Unit 6 employees. No performance pay will be awarded. And finally, there are modifications to health care plan design, and employees will work a 4-day work schedule from July 5th, 2017 through August 15th, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of the aforementioned terms of employment for fiscal year 2018.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Mrs. Summer.
I just want to give another thank you to Ms. Rawls and all of her team and all of the leadership of our negotiating units. It is very nice that everything is settled at the beginning of the summer and we can move forward. And this took a lot of hard work and collaboration with everyone. And so thank you all.
Thank you.
Item 5.09 is the first quarter operating budget fund supplemental and transfer for FY 2018. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the first quarter operating budget fund supplemental and transfer for fiscal year 2018 to be submitted to the county executive and county council.
Second.
We have a presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Chief Alex Shagnova, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Stansky, Director of Financial Operations.
So some of my comments will harken back to those made earlier under item 5.01. On the 14th of June, 2017, when the County Council adopted its budget, it introduced a series of amendments that totaled to $3,085,000. Those were aligned with both compensation and fixed charges elements associated with the SAAC agreements because they had not been ratified and therefore lacked specificity. So what this agenda item does, 5.09, is authorize the superintendent on your behalf to issue a request to the County Council to have legislation drafted and introduced on our behalf that would reallocate from the CAO contingency account to the Board of Education an amount equal to $3,085,000. Of that $3,085,000, $1,885,000 of it would be inside of maintenance of efforts spread across the various categories and come through as county government unrestricted general fund increases. And then $1.2 million of that total would come through as part of the initially authorized up to $7.5 million outside of MOE non-recurring exclusionary cost reduction. The $1.2 million would be slated for the internal service fund for healthcare, and therefore it is considered restricted funding. The exhibit that you have before you delineates the specific breakdown and distribution of those funds. With that, we conclude our remarks.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Thank you. Item 6.01 is administrative personnel appointments. This is an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheets be promoted and or appointed.
All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 6.02 is an information item, the Shady Side Elementary School Telecommunications Transfer Facility. I know we don't have a presentation, but is there any board questions or comments on this item? Is there any public comment on this item? All right. Item 6.03 is the third-party project, Jones Elementary School Shade Structure. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? Second. All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Jones Elementary School third-party project, Shade Structure.
Do I have a motion? Do I have any board questions or comments on this item? Is there any public comment? Mrs. Birch?
You know, I still want to put solar panels on the top of all of these, or work solar panels on and turn them into shade structures without the schools having to pay for them. Is that a possibility? Have we looked into that? Seriously, you know, this is going to be my weird question forever. I think this is a really good idea. And until you tell me it's not a really good idea, I'm going to keep bringing it up.
So as the industry for alternative energy generation continues to mature, we're obviously always looking at it. You know that we have a ground-based array that's being installed in Fort Smallwood, and we've partnered with the city of Annapolis and the county to undertake a shared distribution out of a ground-based array in the city of Annapolis as well. So we're continuing to look at the sort of evolutionary process of the solar industry, both technology-wise and cost structure-wise. I mean, the cost structure is incrementally coming down as they're becoming more efficient at constructing them. So I would say we're not there yet today, but we're going to keep our eye on it.
Okay, well, you've got me for another year and a half, so you should expect this question at least 2 or 3 more times.
All right, all those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 6.04 is the Education Facilities Master Plan. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move it from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the 2017 Educational Facilities Master Plan.
Second.
Do I have any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Next, we have a series of policy revisions. The first two are third readings, which are action items. The first is item 6.05, suspension and dismissal of professional staff code GBU. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy GBU, subject to final correction for style and format.
So moved. Second.
Do we have any board questions or comments? Do we have any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. The third reading is item 6.06, investigations and due process code BAG. Dr. Arletto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy BAG, subject to final correction for style and format.
So moved. Second.
Are there any board questions? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Next, we have 6 second readings. The first is 6.07, Purchasing Authority Code DE. And I know the comment period wasn't up before we got our packets.
For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. That is correct. The 30-day comment period was not up by the time you received your packet, but we did not receive any public comment on policy DE.
Okay, and this will come back before us on the 12th of July?
Yes, correct.
Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? All right. The next second reading item is Purchasing Procedures DEA, item 6.08. Were there any comments on that one?
Again, no public comments on policy DEA.
Are there any board questions or comments? Or any public comments today? All right. The third one is item 6.09, Bidding Procedures, Code DEB. Any comments?
No public comments on policy DEB.
Okay. Any board questions? Any public comments today? All right. Item 6.10, Policy DEC, Vendor Relations.
No public comments on policy DEC.
Any board questions? Mrs. Birch?
I guess I have a general question about all of these, and maybe we asked them before. Did you send them out to vendors and people that deal with our contractors, with our people who we buy from in general? I mean, were they sent to people who these impact, basically? Just wondering.
I'll check in with Chief Operating Officer for the school district. So the answer is no. I mean, obviously they're up for general comment by anybody, just like any item of policy or regulation. We did not explicitly send these out to the industry for comment. The changes that we made, if you take a look at the internals, largely were to either stylistic, i.e. non-consequential, or more importantly, were to bring our policy and regs into alignment with provisions adopted by the General Assembly. Okay. So essentially, they were regulatory and stylistic in nature, not substantive.
No big procedure changes.
So the end user essentially has the same interaction level with us as they previously did.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you. I did not ask this question during first reading, but I've had a chance to contemplate on that and on this a bit. And there's no clean way of asking this question, but some of us may be running for to become elected members of this board potentially next year. And I'm reading the vendor relations and in particular the regulations that stipulate gifts. and I want to be very clear that a campaign contribution would not qualify as a gift. Is that your read on that?
I think that is the intent of this policy and regulation. I can certainly, get you look at state law and go back and confirm that in writing, but that's not the intent here.
And I just wanted to be clear on that because, again, it's more of a transparency aspect that if there's a vendor that contributes to someone's campaign, and that's potentially going to happen. It happens at the state level. It happens at the county level. I just want to be clear because what that would potentially entail then is that we need to disclose that on our ethics statements, and that's why I'm asking. For that reason, as well as then saying that the campaign entity is separate from the individual.
Yeah, generally speaking, as it relates to state law with campaign contributions, the state does not regard them as gifts. They're considered something separate when the state, when the elected officials have to do their documents for the ethics compliance. So I believe that would be the same here.
And that part I get there. What I just want to make sure, because we have our own ethics commission here at the Board of Ed, it's not the state ethics commission or the county ethics commission, that we're all consistent or unified in that read of both the policy, the regulation, and then anything that may impact that from an ethical perspective.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think if the board would like, perhaps we can, ask the ethics commission, our ethics commission, to issue, a statement or an opinion on that specifically, so that we have it in writing.
Thank you.
Ms. Sasso.
Yeah. I think we probably must have something in writing, since the board will eventually all be elected, so that it's basically a matter of fact already stated. So can you draft something from the Ethics Commission so that it's in writing already?
Sure, I can get in touch with the Ethics Commission and ask them to review this issue.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Item 6.11, also a second reading, transfer or easements pertaining to Board Property Code DH.
Again, no public comment on policy DH.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment today? Okay, and item 6.12, the last of the second reads, is joint agreements policy KF.
And no public comment on policy KF.
Is there any board questions or comments? Any public comment today? All right, so all 6 of those will be back on the 12th for a vote.
Yes.
And then we have 3 first reads. Item 6.13, Student Nutrition Services Whole School Code EB.
Again, for the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. Food and Nutrition Services brings policy EB, Student Nutrition Services Whole School, to you for first reading. This policy was last revised on April 23rd, 2015. The updated policy addresses student nutrition standards encompassing the entire school environment. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Mrs. Birch.
You know that this is always a big issue, what this policy says in schools and how different schools interpret what this says. I don't have any kids in elementary school anymore, but so this doesn't say that you can't give out lollipops ever, does it?
So
I'm just asking.
Specifically say that, no.
So it says you should consider wellness. So if you gave out a lollipop once a month, that wouldn't be the end of the world, right?
Correct.
I'm just saying, because, you know, there are some times when principals come into schools and there are issues because the new principal and the school do not have the same thoughts about wellness and they don't get along very well. So I'm just wondering, you know, because parents like to point to regulations and principals like to just tell them the way that it's going to be. And, you know, as a parent, I'm just you know, but I'm just wondering, like, can you bring in cupcakes? Can you not bring in cupcakes? There's the question.
Well, so I don't know if you want to speak on that with packaged foods. Our
Well,
policy
yeah, I
does
know it has
address
to have
that.
it has to have a label because you have to know where it was made and what the allergenic ingredients are and all that stuff. I got that.
For the record, Jody was the supervisor of food and nutrition services, a parent and a registered dietitian here in Anne Arundel County. This policy is I think driven as a model, across the nation to really set the nutrition standards above a federal, state, and a local regulation. So we take pride in all of the fruits and the vegetables and the awesome, healthy, nutritious meals we sell. And we really, this is just saying, let it trickle all the way through the system. So the federal legislation that was just passed, as far as a wellness policy, states that you really have to have the role modeling in place and you really have to set the good example. But it also says you have to comply with the SMART Snacks, which is a USDA standard, and then there's Maryland Nutrition Standards, which are MSDE. And they really say things have to have a fruit or a vegetable as a component. It has to have a protein. It has to be whole grain. So in reality, we really want to continue to encourage those items, and in our office, we would continue to support the schools in ways they can meet those initiatives. So I think there's so many ways that we could really celebrate, and it doesn't have to be that lollipop. And this is basically saying really encourage them to go to the healthy option, and we'll give many options to really have them meet this.
But what if it's mom bringing something in for a birthday?
That, again, would not be compliant if it wasn't made from an approved source, which is a COMAR regulation.
Okay.
So if it comes from home and it's...
But if she goes to Giant and buys cupcakes...
And the nutrient label was with it, we would encourage another option, but that would be something, as long as it met that Smart Snack nutrient label, it would be approved.
Okay.
Halloween carrots. In all due respect, having a daughter that went through Davidsonville Elementary, their Halloween celebrations are fantastic. So they use fruits and vegetables, and they make things that are very health-oriented and very positive. So it could really reflect on the school environment as well as taking it home.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on what Mrs. Burge was saying, but in another way. Just to be clear then, because that I didn't read it that way, but now I see. Let's say there's a contest and somebody wants to bring in 25 or 30 pizzas to reward kids for doing a good job somewhere. So pick your pizza supplier. I don't want to say any of the names, but the big ones. So somebody comes in with 25 pizzas, they will no longer be able to do that now?
Well, they couldn't before either. So the policy states nothing can be in competition with the National School Lunch or School Breakfast Program. So that's the first part of it. And then secondly, it can't come in during the school hours if it doesn't meet Smart Snacks. So the language is still the same, and it was in the past policy as well.
So when I was under the impression that some of our schools, if there's a rewards event, or I should say a awards ceremony or something, that there was pizza was provided sometimes, or there were snacks or other things. So is when that happens, because I've been invited to some, so when that happens, they're in violation of the existing policy, and then potentially they'll be in violation of this new policy.
That is correct. So the language was already in the current policy. I think what we could do in our office, though, and what we continue to do, is work with the schools so we could really make the promotion or that celebration work within the policy. So there's ways we can do it, and we're currently doing it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Nally.
Part of the issue in schools is that there are a lot of students, or some students, who are allergic. So when at Davidsonville and other schools, when we've had those issues, the old time of bringing in the cupcakes, I had a student at Davidsonville who couldn't even sit at a table with someone having a peanut butter sandwich. So we have to, the nutrition labels are extremely important because of the allergy situation. And you can also work with, and we did work with the school lunch and do have reward kind of celebrations. You can have things that that work with your and we have. So I think it's just a new way of thinking, and not just, I know you think about making your kids cupcakes at home and bringing them in, but there was a certain amount of problems with that.
And Mrs. Nally, to your comment on allergies, number 9 does address, considering wellness issues as well as allergies. So we have 4 registered dietitians on staff. We work with all the school nurses to really look at that, because when it's coming from home, if it's not prepackaged and it's not labeled, we're really putting ourselves at risk for the children who have allergies or somebody that we may not even know about. Right.
Ms. Sasso.
I have a question that has to do with the teachers and the celebration, because I went to one of the schools that they were celebrating the Hispanic week, and they had the Hispanic food, and there were only the teachers. This only addresses the student nutritional services. So the teachers could have something brought into the school for their celebrations?
That is correct.
Cupcakes, pizzas.
Yeah, anything for the teachers.
Their vending machines. So this is really, the adults could they could have a potluck luncheon if they wanted. The adults would manage the students.
Mrs. Birch.
And also, if the PTA is doing an event at night, they're doing a cultural night, they can do foods that they want to do in the evening.
After the school day, they don't have to meet the USDA Smart Snacks, but they
Right.
still have to be compliant with that approved source where that product comes from.
Okay.
But it's currently there, and that's what we're currently doing, working with the schools.
Okay. And then the other important piece of this is that we add to our regulation about negative school lunch balances. Can you explain what the change is there?
Sure. So on the regulation, the new wellness policy that was issued from USDA, it says we have to notify the parents what our charge policy is. So we have a policy that's been established by this board a few years back. All of our students without lunch money are entitled up to 5 lunches. And that would be their negative debt balance that they can carry over. So what we did in the regulation is add number 18, which includes that language. We also have it in the parent handbook and the parent calendar. Thank you.
Dr. Arlotto.
Thank you. Completely unrelated to this policy and moving forward, I wanted to take the opportunity because Jody was here at the table. And you've heard me sing her praises before, and you all know how wonderful she and her team are. This past Monday, we opened the farmers market at Brooklyn Park Middle School, which you got to see and hear about, and our farmer, the Schlegels, were here at our last board meeting. So we opened this past Monday with great fanfare and some nice turnout. But one of the people, of the many that were there to celebrate the opening of this, was the director of USDA for this geographic region. She's based in New Jersey, and she drove down from New Jersey to be there for this opening of the farmers market, Brooklyn Park Middle School. And as she and I were talking, and I was singing Jody's praises, she grabbed my arm and looked at me and said, "You have no idea how amazing Jody is," she told me. She says, "There is nobody in the country that is doing food nutrition services like Anne Arundel County because of Jody's leadership." She said, "Nobody in the country." Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment
Just
today?
a quick
Or
question.
Ms.
The
Sasso?
farmers market, can you tell us what are the dates so that it's a matter of public record?
Sure. The farmers market opened last Monday. It will be in operation until August 28th. It's every Monday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So please join us.
Thank you. And this will go up on the website for 30 days if,
Yes,
if parents
correct.
are concerned about cupcakes and lollipops.
Sure, they can
Okay.
provide public comment. Thank you.
That includes you, Teresa. You can enter your comment too. 6.14 is policy code GBS on salaries for teachers.
Yes, the Division of Human Resources brings policy GBS salaries teachers to you for first reading. This policy was last revised on November 7th, 1990. This updated policy provides guidelines for the determination of teacher salaries at AACPS. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment, and we can answer any questions you may have.
I don't have any board questions. Is there any public comment? All right, so we'll put that on the website for 30 days?
Yes, correct.
And then item 6.15, first reading, Student Performances Code, IKC.
The Office of School Performance and the Division of Curriculum and Instruction bring policy IKC, Student Performances, to you for first reading. This policy was last revised on January 8th, 1997. The updated policy provides guidelines on the selection of school performances at AACPS. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment. We can answer any questions you may have.
I don't have any board questions. Is there any public comment? All right, that'll be posted as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Last item on the agenda today is a review item, 7.01, website update.
Good morning. For just a few more minutes this morning. I'm Bob Mosier, Chief Communications Officer for the school system, and to my left are Donna Hoyle, our Manager of Web Services, and Monica Monk, our Senior Manager for Communications. We're happy to be here to take you through our new website, which we launched last week. This website is the result of a year of collaboration with every department in this school system. They have been terrific partners. Donna spearheaded this project, and she and Monica, as well as I want to mention Amber McClanahan, our online communications specialist, who did an awful lot of work as well. They've really done the heavy lifting. This is our old site, which was built in 2003, which I would liken to the Mesozoic era in terms of web standards. This is our new site, which we launched last week. Just a couple of things about it. We designed it in an attempt, sort of, and Donna will talk about this, but the reverse of the way the old site was built. Instead of an org chart mentality, we put some focus groups together and went from a user accessibility standpoint. It is easier to access. It has more information for people. I want to say that it is an ongoing initiative. It is by far not finished. We have a lot of work left to do. Our school websites, for example, we did not do in this round. We're doing at a later date. But there's a couple key features I want to show you before Donna and Monica walk you through the heart of it. First, it is ADA compliant, so folks with disabilities have full access to it. We have the ability to put important messages on our site, like this. So if, for example, in the middle of the morning it starts to snow and we have to close schools 2 hours early, we can put this up there, and every user who gets to our site will get a message like this that you have to click off of to get rid of, so we can ensure that you see it. It is responsive. It adapts to your smartphone, your iPad, your tablet, without having to scroll and enlarge and do all that other kind of stuff that we used to do. And one of my favorite features, this translate button here, will translate our website, every text part of our website, into, I counted them this morning, 102 languages. And so that's very helpful. It does use Google Translate, so it is limited by whatever Google Translate limits us to, but it is obviously exponentially better than what we had before. And to get back to the English version, you just click Show Original, and it takes you back there. So with that, I'll let Donna walk you through, and then Monica walk you through the heart of it.
Good morning. So what we've done, as Bob mentioned, is a complete overhaul of our website. And the task was not just transferring the information from the old site to the new, but really enhancing the information for the newly formatted site. So I'm going to review the most significant changes that we've made over the last 12 months while we've been working on this. We think that we've designed a site with a great deal of visual impact, and that's certainly more modern. The old site was structured like the organization chart, and with this site we're really focusing more on topics that are of interest to parents and students, more things that parents and students would be looking for, and not necessarily the way that we as an organization would view our information and ourselves and our website. So we'll go over that in a little bit more detail later. So going to the top left of the site, we kept some of the more familiar features of the site. Schools Today is something that's very familiar to our users, and that's school status information. So we kept that in the same place. front and center and easily accessible. One of the major enhancements over to the right on the top is it's called the Mega Schools menu. And certainly this is a lot different than our old website, the way that we're presenting schools. If you click on any of the schools, it takes you to what we refer to as school gateway or school information pages. And there are links on these pages, basic school information, Twitter feed, just everything you would kind of want to know about that school, as well as links to the school websites. So that's a lot different than our old site. As Bob mentioned, the translation function, certainly something that's going to be a great feature for our wide audience and our very diverse audience. The items at the top, top right, the global icons, are really information that we felt should be front and center. We know from experience that our school calendar is certainly the most visited area of our website, so that's why we presented that on the top of the front page. The social media, moving over to the left, the social media icons, they actually remain static, so anywhere you go throughout the website, they will be on the left side. And there are links to our Twitter and all of our Twitter and Facebook and social media accounts. Over to the right is our search engine, which is the magnifying. So I want to point out that eventually this will be fully operational, but right now it is not. The site needs to be up for a while before Google actually picks up the information. So we've done everything technically, to start that process, and in a few weeks that should be fully operational. So next I want to highlight our channels, the channel bar, which is really the main navigation of our website. Some of these subjects are very similar to the old website, but some of them we made changes to. Instruction is now academics. Parents is now families, which we felt was a more inclusive term. Community and business is now partners. And about us is really where we attempted to consolidate all of the information about the organization itself, which was really more scattered throughout the site before. So just to take you through some of the focus of the content on these main pages, if we look at the students page, so what we did is we tried to create groups of information that would be very familiar to our users and duplicate that throughout the website. So calendars and schedules is all together. You'll see that duplicated on different pages throughout our site. Meet our students, you'll also see meet our families, some other information that's graphically represented. And this was a joint project with our marketing department and allows us to kind of use their information and create dynamic content that would change on a frequent basis. We also, other links that are really important are under resources and links and health and safety. We represented a lot of information graphically. We wanted it to be eye-catching, and again, you'll see health and safety with the student hotline, information that's really important to students and families. So you'll see those groups of information duplicated throughout our website. Next, I want to look at the academics tab. So this is completely different, a complete overhaul. We really worked extensively on dividing this up into subjects and programs, which we felt was just a better representation of the information. So this is kind of where you would get any of that information for a required subject, a program, and then there are links for academic support on the right. And then I want to point out that if you click on any of the curriculum areas, what we wanted to do was create uniform information. So we did work with the departments on making the sites look very similar, so that people would really know, where to access information on the same place. And the contact area on each page is on the right side, so that any parent or student would know where to actually get assistance in that area. Next, to look at the services page. This is a really good example of how we tried to make the site more topical. So we wanted it to be problem and solution oriented. So if someone is actually looking for information regarding a topic, that it would be here. And again, you'll see the same thing under families, because some of those are the same topics, are of the same concern. So the pages are different and relevant information for each topic. Schools, the schools page has general school information, blue and green ribbon, wellness schools, and bus transportation, field trips, things that are topical to a school specifically. The board page is kind of everything about the board, the same as a lot of the same information as before, but presented differently on this new site. Next, the staff. So this was a really extensive project with the Human Resources Department. HR is kind of a site unto itself, and it is the most traveled area of our website. And that's just due to the nature of the information here and the number of employees that we have. So we really worked extensively on dividing this up into those that would like to work here, our current staff, and retirees. So that's divided up that way. And this site has a great deal of information and lots of layers. The Partners tab is really just a catch-all for businesses that want to work with us, community information, and vice versa. And then as I mentioned, the About Us tab has information regarding the organization. So that's where you would find org charts, information about Dr. Arlotto, a catch-all for information regarding AACPS. So back to the front page. I'm now going to turn it over to Monica Monk to discuss the middle of our page, which is really the way that the communications office is going to be managing our news items.
So as you can see in the main part of the most graphic part of our website, we have what is already familiar, a slideshow right in the beginning, but it's much bigger and brighter, and also gives us more opportunities to use other tools besides just graphics to communicate with the public. As you can see from the first graphic, it's well, this graphic is the summer video, summer graphic that has all details about summer programming that's going on in the school system, not just academically, but it also includes summer meals that are provided throughout the summer. So a catch-all for summer information. And then the other graphic that's currently running in the slideshow is a tutorial video for folks to get acquainted with the new website, so that they feel welcomed and can jump right in and get all the information they need to navigate this new site. On the right-hand side, we have tabs that the communications office will manage that we feel is the most pertinent, relevant information that the public needs to know right now. The first tab is the upcoming at AACPS, which is directly linked to our school calendar, but it also is a tool that we can use to link to other school events going on, so it can trickle down to other schools as well as offices. Anything exciting that's going on, we can advertise right here as an upcoming event within this tab. The next tab is AACPS Now, which is another way for us to share news that may not need to be featured as a big graphic as part of the slideshow, but that is relevant to what the public needs to know. What's currently running is final school hours, which is definitely a hot topic for our public. As they are gearing up for the new school year, knowing when school starts and ends, since it has changed, as well as administrative changes that are currently happening and that have occurred throughout the summer. Parents want to know who their new principals are for school, so they'll be able to get that information quickly and access it there. That is information that obviously will change frequently and often, again, as news changes within the school system. The next tab is Get Involved. We thought that it was very important to put out front and center reaching out to the public how they can get involved. So not only businesses, but volunteers, which is a huge part of our system to keep our kids and our schools active and going in the right direction. So we wanted to feature that. That is information that is not as dynamic as the other tab information is, but it's something, again, that we wanted to include to embrace the community so that they know that we need them to help us move forward. And then we have the hashtag AACPS Awesome tab, which is information that we like to include about all the exciting things that are happening that is truly AACPS awesome in our school system. I did want to point out one other thing with the global icons at the top. We do have the ability to add icons in that section, and we will do so as needed when exciting information, like for instance, as the school year begins, parents are going to want to know bus schedules. They're going to want to know lots of important information that's coming up. We'll be able to put a new icon up there so that they can quickly access that information. And then Donna will finish talking about the rest of the website.
Great, thank you. So at the bottom of the site, I want to point out that, again, some of these topics, we did hold parent focus groups, and some of this information was decided as a result of some of our focus groups. We did have testing assessments up front on our old site. We felt it was important to include that here. Strategic plan, operating capital budgets, more organization information that needs to be front and center. The next three boxes, the lighter colored boxes, are really more news oriented. The middle is our scrolling news releases, which again we had presented differently on our last site, but any recent news releases would be here, like the last 5 or 6, and then on each side of that is more longer term news, things that are news oriented, but they would appear and disappear on our website, but they need to be here for a while, as opposed to the middle part that Monica just spoke about, which is more news that appears and reappears quicker. Down at the bottom are our social media feeds, Twitter and Facebook, and our television station, cable media information. And that's really, kind of a summary of the whole website. Our future efforts, as Bob mentioned, ADA compliance at the beginning. We're going to focus heavily on keeping the site compliant, which is, certainly a big issue for any large website or any governmental website in this day and age. And so we will be doing that. We'll be continually enhancing and improving the information. One of the large features of this website is that it does have a back end, and we can have content contributors. So as we've worked with the departments in building this, we'll be continually providing training, because they will be able to do updates and enhance their websites. But we'll also oversee that, to ensure that the site, continues to have appropriate information and is ADA compliant. So I have a few thank yous because there was a lot of collaboration with this website. Certainly our communications office, Monica Monk, contributed a lot of ideas at the beginning of this project, and that was just really a great help to us. Amber McClanahan was very instrumental in doing the school introductory pages. Lots of work went into that. And the departments, just that I want to mention is, as I mentioned, HR. We did a lot of work together over the last few months, and they were tremendously helpful in getting this new website up and that large departmental area. Curriculum and instruction, certainly lots of work and lots of contributions, and the partnerships and marketing department contributed a lot of great ideas for the site, and that is reflected in our new website. Advanced studies and special education, they had a lot of complex information to rework for the new site. And we're very proud of the new site. And any questions? Thank you.
Ms. Sasso?
I have a question for Bob. Bob, on the emergency button, and I'm going to refer back to it because it's something that Annapolis City has. You have to register with Annapolis City,
right.
But if there's any alert physically, you can either get it in your telephone, and I mean, it goes live. All of a sudden, it just starts ringing and it starts talking whether you like it or not. Can the parents do that?
So not on this website, but you're foreshadowing things, because I mentioned this is an ongoing project, and we're discussing a mobile app now, which will do exactly what you were talking about.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you again, Madam President. I'll be brief. Brevity is not my strong suit, but I'll try. Just to say thank you to you, Mr. Mosier, and your entire team. I have been saying to Mr. Mosier and Dr. Arlotto since I got here that I thought the old website was past its time. And the reality is that that was created when websites were not the primary information modality, and people were still using more TV at that time, and we've certainly seen that shift over the last 12, 14, 15 or so years. So thank you for that. This really does meet our obligation to inform, and as we grow for the ADA compliance, and certainly there's the multilingual capacity here, which is a tremendous need now. I think this is excellent. Provides the rich content, great videos, great graphics, in such a great searchable format that is not just what you see on the computer screen, but it's also a great mobile experience. And I can't underscore that enough as well, because it's not just mobile compatibility anymore, but rather it's an experience. It's a mobile experience that we need to ensure that we're setting. So this is tremendous, and I can't say thank you enough.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes, I want to stress again, while you were doing it, I was doing it on my phone here, and it was wonderful how it adapts to my phone and how I can go through everything. Fabulous. Y'all have done a great job. Thank you so much. And just for Ms. Sassos, when you say about the emergency calls, if you have a student in the school and you're registered to get the messages, we hear from Bob all the time if there's an emergency. So we do get the phone calls about that. Bob tells us when a road is closed and when the school is shut down, and we do get those through that, but an added app would be there. But parents do have that's available.
I just want to echo that this is a fantastic job. I just want to point out for the public, up at the top where we were doing the select language, next to it to the left, there's a button that says join our team. So if you're looking to get hired at AACPS, that's the button for you. And under the board tab, there is a section at the very bottom that says the School Board Appointment Commission, and anybody who would love to sit in the seat next to Ms. Sasso, they're currently accepting applications right on the website. So thank you all.
The empty one. The empty one.
The empty one.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of announcements before we go back into closed session. The first is that the budget committee meeting that was scheduled for today has been canceled, and the second is that our next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, July 12th at 10 a.m. in the room. Mrs. Hummer.
I move we go into closed. Ladies. Oh, okay. I move that we go into closed session, discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
All those in favor? All right, the public portion of the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.
And at each of the high schools, it's through their signature program. And then in STEM and BEMA, we also have internships that are required for our students to complete. Those students are brought to us multiple ways, and those internships are brought to us multiple ways. Students may have internship opportunities in the community that they bring to us, but also we have our business partners bringing in internship opportunities that they want to offer to our students. And all of those are fully vetted, everyone is fully background checked, and there's very specific guidelines about how that runs.
So